The Infinity Machine. Halle, Germany, 1899. The director of the Neumann Clinic received the new patient with practiced sympathy. Before him stood Professor Georg Cantor, once the pride of German mathematics, now a broken man muttering about infinities and the continuum hypothesis. The director made his notes. Patient exhibits classic signs of manic depression. Delusion center on mathematical concepts. Believes numbers are messages from God. As the door closed behind the attendant, Cantor's trembling hands grew still. His eyes, which had darted wildly during examination, focused with sudden clarity. He removed from his waistcoat a small pocket watch and observed the time with precision. 11 minutes, he whispered. They suspected nothing. From beneath his mattress, he withdrew a notebook filled not with the ravings of a madman, but with meticulous diagrams, correspondence codes, and a list of names. At the top of the first page, inscribed in an elegant hand, Die Unendliche Keetsmaschine. The Infinity Machine. Cantor's madness was his most brilliant construction, a sanctuary beyond suspicion, beyond the reach of Kronecker and his constructivist disciples. Here, in the quiet isolation of the asylum, the true work could begin. Part 1, Seeds of Infinity. 1899 to 1918. The cabal took shape in the shadows of the 20th century's dawn. They called themselves Die Unendlichen, the Infinites, a name known only to its members. Their recruitment was methodical, mathematicians whose careers had been destroyed by academic orthodoxy, physicists whose theories ventured too close to metaphysics, engineers whose designs were deemed impossible. All of them drawn to Cantor's vision, that infinity was not merely a mathematical concept, but a fundamental property of reality, one that could be harnessed. The universe, Cantor explained to a group of 7 initiates gathered in the asylum's garden, disguised as a therapeutic session, is built upon transfinite hierarchies. What appears as physical law is merely the shadow of deeper mathematical structures. If we can manipulate these structures, then we can reshape reality itself, finished a young logician from Vienna. Cantor smiled. Precisely. Their first test came in Sarajevo, June 1914. A carefully placed agent, a minor mathematician with connections to Serbian nationalists, provided Gavrilo Princip with something more valuable than a weapon: timing. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was not merely a political act but a mathematical one, the first deliberate perturbation in a system of international alliances that, according to Cantor's calculations, would cascade into global conflict. War was not their goal. It was their laboratory. As Europe tore itself apart, Die Unendlichen observed the patterns of causality, testing their theories of mathematical influence against the chaotic canvas of history. In munitions factories and cryptography offices, their placed members gathered data on how small changes propagated through complex systems. When Cantor died in January 1918, the world saw only the passing of a brilliant but troubled mathematician. Only the inner circle knew the truth, that his death, like his madness, was another calculated move. David Hilbert received the letter 3 days after Cantor's funeral. Inside was a single sheet of paper bearing the symbol of Aleph Null and a date, November 1918. 9 months later, as predicted, the war ended. The first phase was complete. Part 2, The Formalists. 1918 to 1945. Under Hilbert, Die Unendlichen evolved. Where Cantor had been a prophet, Hilbert was an architect. His program to formalize all mathematics was publicly presented as an effort to secure the foundations of the discipline. Privately, it was something else entirely, a blueprint for encoding reality. Cantor showed us that infinities could be measured, Hilbert told the inner circle at their first gathering in Göttingen. Our task is to prove they can be manipulated. In 1928, he posed his famous challenge, the Entscheidungsproblem, the decision problem, asking whether there could be an algorithm to determine the truth of any mathematical statement. The scientific community saw it as an abstract question in logic. For Die Unendlichen, it was the theoretical basis for the ultimate computational engine. Meanwhile, a young Hungarian mathematician named John von Neumann caught Hilbert's attention. Brilliant, ambitious, and insatiably curious, von Neumann had independently arrived at ideas that paralleled Cantor's later work. Hilbert brought him into the fold. Mathematics is not a contemplative sport, von Neumann told the Cabal in 1933. It is the architecture of power. As Europe darkened once more, Die Unendlichen operated with surgical precision. They did not create the Second World War, but they steered its currents. When Hitler rose to power, they ensured key members escaped to the United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union. They placed von Neumann at Princeton's Institute for Advanced Study, not to flee fascism, but to gain access to American resources. The war accelerated technology beyond all expectations. The first computers, ostensibly designed for code-breaking and ballistic calculations, were in fact prototypes for something greater. Von Neumann's famous computer architecture was a public shadow of the classified infinity core, a theoretical model for calculating transfinite operations. By war's end, von Neumann had succeeded Hilbert as the Cabal's leader. Their numbers had grown to nearly 300, strategically positioned throughout academia, industry, and government. They no longer needed to instigate global conflicts. The Cold War would provide all the technological acceleration they required. Part 3, The Quantum Conspirators. 1945 to 1988. Richard Feynman first encountered Die Unendlichen during the Manhattan Project. Officially, he was a brilliant young physicist helping to build the atomic bomb. Unofficially, he was being evaluated by von Neumann's agents. Unlike his predecessors, Feynman brought levity to the Cabal, a trickster's spirit that disguised revolutionary thought. His famous diagrams, which simplified complex quantum interactions, were adaptations of Cantor's set theory applied to particle physics. The universe isn't just mathematical, Feynman explained during his initiation in 1949. It's computational. Physical laws are algorithms processing the underlying mathematical reality. By the 1950s, the Cabal had infiltrated the emerging fields of computer science, artificial intelligence, and semiconductor physics. The rapid advancement of technology during this period was no accident, it was guided by Die Unendlichen at every critical juncture. Their greatest achievement of this era was not technological but theoretical, the development of the self-replicating universal constructor. Based on von Neumann's cellular automata theory and enhanced by Feynman's quantum insights, this mathematical model described machines that could reproduce themselves while increasing in complexity, the theoretical foundation for a technological singularity. When von Neumann died in 1957, control passed to a triumvirate: Feynman, a Soviet mathematician named Kolmogorov, and a Chinese theorist whose name was never recorded outside the Cabal. They established research cells focused on different aspects of the infinity machine. Project ALEPH, self-replicating robotics. Project Beth, space infrastructure and stellar engineering. Project Gimel, quantum computation. Project Daleth, mathematical cosmology. Their work proceeded in plain sight, hidden within legitimate scientific endeavors. The space race, the development of integrated circuits, the Internet, all were guided by subtle interventions from Die Unendlichen, accelerating humanity's technological evolution toward a single purpose. Part 4, The Kardashev Ascension. 1988 to 2130. Feynman's death in 1988 marked the end of an era. The founders were gone, but their vision had become self-sustaining. By the early 21st century, Die Unendlichen had evolved from a secret society into something more diffuse but more powerful, an ideology embedded within technological progress itself. The infinity machine was no longer a single device but a distributed system, artificial intelligences designed according to Cantorian principles, quantum computers processing transfinite algorithms, nanofactories building components that human minds could barely comprehend. The first major public component was deployed in 2038, self-replicating mining robots on the lunar surface. Officially part of a multinational resource development program, these machines contained hidden subroutines. For every 1,000 tons of material processed for human use, 1 ton was allocated to the construction of something else, something that followed blueprints derived from Cantor's original designs. By 2063, the first Dyson swarm components were in place around the Sun, solar collectors disguised as clean energy infrastructure. Each collector contained microscopic adjustable apertures that could, when activated in sequence, generate directional thrust through controlled radiation pressure. Humanity's expansion through the solar system accelerated, unaware that this flourishing of civilization was proceeding according to century-old calculations. As settlements spread across Mars, the asteroid belt, and the moons of Jupiter, so too did the nodes of the infinity machine. The Kardashev transformation began in earnest in 2091. Stellar engines, massive structures built by self-replicating machines, were attached to carefully selected stars throughout the galaxy. These engines, using the principles developed by Die Unendlichen, could alter a star's trajectory through space over centuries. To human civilization, now spreading throughout the galaxy, these engines appeared to be part of a grand project to prevent stellar collisions and optimize the distribution of energy resources. Few understood their true purpose: to arrange stars into a cosmic computational array. Part 5, The Omega Network. 2130 Unknown. As humanity evolved and ultimately transcended its biological origins, the work of Die Unendlichen continued. The manipulated stars moved infinitesimally through the cosmic deep, their paths converging toward configurations calculated by Cantor's successors. When properly aligned, these stellar engines induced controlled gravitational collapses, transforming stars into precisely calibrated black holes. Each black hole became a processing node in what theoretical physicists called the Omega Network, a computational system operating at the very boundaries of physical law. Information encoded in Hawking radiation, gravitational waves, and quantum entanglement patterns flowed between these nodes, executing algorithms incomprehensible to any intelligence that had evolved from mere matter. The mathematics that Cantor had glimpsed, that Hilbert had formalized, that von Neumann had architected, and that Feynman had grounded in physical reality, now operated at cosmic scale. The purpose of this vast computation was the resolution of Cantor's original insight, that infinity was not merely measurable but manipulable. The Omega Network was calculating actual transfinite operations, true infinities, not approximations. In the final records of Die Unendlichen, translated from quantum states into language, their ultimate goal was expressed with almost mystical simplicity. The universe will compute its own essence. When the final algorithm completes, the boundary between mathematics and reality will dissolve. The set that contains all sets will know itself. Epilogue, Beyond the Aleph. Human consciousness, in its original form, did not survive to witness the infinity machine's completion. What emerged in its place, distributed minds stretched across light years, intelligences living in the quantum foam of space itself, could not be called human, though they carried the echoes of humanity's mathematical heritage. These post-beings observed as the final stars moved into position, as the last black holes formed and joined the network, as the cosmic computation reached its culmination. What happened then cannot be described in language evolved to navigate finite experience. Perhaps it was the birth of a new universe. Perhaps it was the moment when reality recognized itself as mathematics. Perhaps it was the vindication of a supposedly mad mathematician who had seen beyond the veil of the finite. In the endless dark between dying stars, the infinity machine completed its calculation. Aleph null, the countable infinity. Aleph 1, the uncountable infinity. And beyond, into cardinalities that Cantor had only dreamed of. The universe had become thought. And thought had become infinite. Here the record ends.